Hello everybody, my name is Dustin, aka Drex, and welcome to and/or back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about the penultimate episode of The Alcoyte, episode 6, entitled Choice. First off, I'd like to mention that this episode takes place during the same time as episode 3, which means 2 out of the 8 episodes are flashbacks, which means 25% of the show is a flashback. The episode starts with the 4 Jedi on Brendok trying to figure out why there is life on the planet when there shouldn't be. Also, Torben wants to go back to Coruscant. That doesn't sound like it should be that important, but the entire plot hinges on that fact for some reason. Later on, Sol ends up alone in the woods for some reason I have forgotten, and he ends up finding May and Osha at the tree they were at the start of episode 3. He then stalks the children back to their house, where he then goes back to the other Jedi and tells them about them. He is able to convince Master and Dara to go check it out, and we then get a scene of a Wookiee hacking a door. The Jedi then go in, and we get the scene from episode 3 of the Jedi meeting the witches, only this time we see Mother Alessandra messing with Torben's head. Anyways, we then cut to the ship, where we then learn that the only reason they wanted to test the children was to buy time, but Sol really does want to test the children. So he tests May, and she gets every question wrong, but he knows she was told to fail. So when Osha comes in, he talks to her, and when she takes the test, she passes it all. Master and Dara then goes to talk to the council to see if they can bring Osha back, but they say no. Later that night, Torben runs tests on the blood samples he took from the twins, and ends up finding evidence of what they came to the planet for. He then decides that he's going to go and abduct one of the twins. I'm not really sure what his plan is. Anyways, he rushes off, and Sol chases him on a speeder bike, while Indara and Kalnaka are on the ship. We then see Mother Anastasia say that she wants to let Osha go with the Jedi, seeing how Osha wants to join them. We then see Mother Coral go to May and tell her to let her anger take over and to stop Osha from leaving. May then goes to start the fire that we see in episode 3. While all of that is happening, Sol and Torben show up and talk to Mother Alessandra and Mother Coral. Then, through a series of unfortunate events and misunderstandings, Mother Alessandra turns into a dust, smoke type demon, along with May, who Sol thinks is Osha, in order to protect, who ends up being May, but again, he thinks it's Osha. He ends up killing Mother Alessandra. Coral then gets mad about this and starts attacking Sol, but Sol doesn't end up fighting back, and instead, Mother Coral and the rest of the Coven end up taking control over Master Kalnaka's mind. Master Kalnaka then attacks Torben and Sol, and during that fight, Master Indara shows up and is able to knock out Kalnaka. All the witches end up getting knocked out and later die in the fire. Sol then ends up finding May and Osha on a bridge. He tries to save both of them, but is unable to, so he lets go of May, who then falls off the bridge that he was holding up with the Force, and he ends up saving Osha. Later on the ship, while Osha is asleep, they all agree to lie in order to protect Osha, while Sol will train her as his Padawan. And the episode ends with the scene from episode 3, as Sol tells Osha their version of what happened. Okay, time for the review segment. So, while I do think this is better than episode 3, it is definitely worse than all the rest. I don't understand why we needed this whole episode as a flashback. This definitely could have worked just as a trimmed down segment, or even just a conversation. Now, while it does kinda pick up from the ending of last episode with the Sol and May plotline, not really, and even then, that was definitely the lesser interesting plotline, as I think we can all agree the Quaimir and Osha plotline was way more interesting. Now, I will say this, it definitely does paint the Jedi in a better light than pretty much the entire rest of the series has so far. Most of the series has been focused on making the Jedi look bad, which I kinda get considering it's called the Alcoyte and it's supposed to heavily be based off the Sith perspective, but still, the way episode 3 framed it, it showed that the Jedi were just there to abduct the children into the Jedi Order, with or without the parents' permission, and that they didn't like anyone else using any other methods in the Force. Whereas here, that's not really the case. They didn't even want to take in the children. In fact, they weren't even supposed to, according to the council at least. And the only reason they end up doing so is because Torben stupidly goes there and there's a bunch of misunderstandings that leads to pretty much everyone's deaths. So it's not really the Jedi's there as antagonistic, and in fact, the actual bad guys in the scenario isn't really Indara, as episode 3 might have suggested, but more so Torben and Sol. They're not really the bad guys, but it's more of their fault than really anyone else's. However, I don't think this episode really answered any of the big questions that episode 3 put up. Like, it doesn't entirely answer how Osha and May are created, or if they're a Force dyad like a lot of people have been theorizing. It doesn't explain how May survived the fall, or this wasn't really a theory that episode 3 put up, but just one I've kind of had and I hoped would be answered, how May met Quimir in the first place. That's really all I have to say about this episode. As for my theories on next episode, I'm not really expecting too much on Quimir's backstory, as Leslie Headland, the creator and showrunner of the show, said that a lot of questions, mainly surrounding about him, wouldn't really be answered until there's a season 2, if there even is a season 2, which, just for his sake, I kind of hope there is, because he's definitely the most interesting part of it. I also kind of expecting some big death. I'm kind of maybe guessing Venestra Rowe could be on the table for death. She's the bald green lady with the light whip, for anyone who hasn't bothered learning names. There have been a lot of theories that she was Quimir's master and that's how he got the strawness back, as it definitely does kind of look like it came from a light whip. I don't know if they would kill her, as they didn't create her. She's actually from the books and a lot of people like her, but she's definitely on the chopping block and it wouldn't be the most wild thing these shows have done. May is also on the chopping block. I can't really figure out what they could do with her in a season 2, but they might just not kill her and start giving her a redemption arc. I can see that happening. Quimir is most definitely not going to die, and if he does, that'll be so much wasted potential, as he is by far the best character in the show, and with all the questions surrounding about him, I really don't think they would kill him. Sol I could see killing, but there's also a lot of things going around him, and he's like the main Jedi character, and I can see a few interesting storylines they can do with him, so I think he's safe as well. And Osha, she's the main character. They're not going to kill her. There's still plenty of story for her. As for any major event, I do think there will be a semi-conclusion to the Quimir arc. It'll kind of end in a way I think that could be a satisfying enough ending if there isn't a season 2, but could easily set up a season 2. I also think we'll get some answers onto whether or not he is an actual Sith, if he is the master of the Sith, or if he is an apprentice of the Sith, because there have been a lot of theories about his actual role as a part of the Sith in the timeline. So I think we'll get some sort of answer for that. If not any others, I think that would be probably the big one they would probably answer. And I don't really have any other ideas. Osha, they'll probably tease her maybe becoming a Sith, give some hints towards that, or they'll just outright say, no, I'm going to be a Jedi, something like that, or I don't know. They'll do something with Osha, obviously. But that's really about it. That's all I have to say this episode. I give this episode a 5 out of 10. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, and I will see you all next time. Later, haters. Bye.